Hey y'all, it's Matt Steen, co-founder of Chemistry Staffing, a little while ago I read a book called Search. It's a novel. It's by Michelle Hunovan, it was a fascinating it was a fascinating book, and it was passed on to me by a friend of mine who knows what I do, and it was a book about a search committee at a Unitarian Universalist church out in California. And it basically, what it was a handbook on how not to do a search. Right. It was the ups and downs of this search team. It could have been based on a true story. I'm not sure. Had some recipes interspersed throughout, which were tasty. But what I found as I was reading through this, not only was the lack of theology kind of cringeworthy, but more than anything else, it really played out, how search teams get in trouble when they're doing a search for their next senior pastor or next youth pastor or whatever. And it got me to thinking, we never, I don't remember taking a class in seminary or Bible college on how to do a search committee. I don't remember sitting in class, and maybe I fell asleep that day, maybe I was sick, I don't know, but I don't remember really being taught how to do that. And we all kind of go through it, and we all kind of figure, this is how we need to do a search. But what I started to realize is that none of us really have a real understanding of what that looks like. And so what I thought I'd do is take some time and over the next few weeks put together just a series of videos on what, how do we do search teams well? How do we do this in a way that doesn't come back to eat our lunch? Because this can be tricky. This is a heavy responsibility. This is a burden we need to feel, because we are bringing in somebody that is going to be our pastor. And we say a lot around here, hiring a pastor is way different than hiring a plumber. Right? If it's a plumber, we don't care, what their theology is. If it's a plumber, all we care about is, can they fix our pipes and can we use our toilet without it exploding? Right? We don't care what their relationship is like with their wife and family. We don't care, what they do in their spare time. But with a pastor, there's a spiritual weight there. We're asking somebody to come in and be a spiritual authority, to teach us, to shepherd us, to discipline us on occasion. And so the search process is so much different than looking for somebody in the corporate world. And so what I'd like to do is, if we can, just over the next few weeks, talk a little bit about, things, practical things about what it looks like to create a search team and have the search team do their job well. Things like, how big should a search team be? Who should be on it? What expectations should we have on what functions does the search team exist to fulfill? What does a time investment look like? Where do search teams get in trouble? And so I think that's the easiest place to jump off right now, is just, as we set this up, where we see search teams get in trouble as we do searches. We work with churches that are staff-led in their search process. We work with churches that have a search team, and we work with both. And honestly, there's no real preference, because your church's polity determines whether you have a search team or if it's staff-led. But what we found is that there are some ways where churches can get into trouble as they set this up. And so typically what ends up happening is people are brought onto a search team that have an agenda. Okay. Now that agenda may be good, may be bad, but they're coming in with an agenda, and they're only going to accept candidates that, fill in the blank. They're only going to bring in candidates who, are reformed. They're only going to accept candidates who are egalitarian. They're only going to accept a candidate who is under the age of 16. Whatever their agenda is, they are bringing in that agenda, and that agenda is going to trump what the Holy Spirit does in the middle of a search team. Okay. And so one of the ways that a search team gets into trouble is it brings in members of the team that are bringing agendas that are more important than anything else. Another thing that will get a church into trouble is just a lack of clarity around a handful of things. Okay, a lack of clarity around the job description. What is it that we expect our pastor to do? What is it that we expect this person, what are the priority areas? Are they supposed to be more of a shepherd and a chaplain? Are they supposed to be more of a hardcore leader? Are they supposed to bring vision? Are they supposed to execute vision based on what the board brings? Are they supposed to be, sitting in the office doing sermons all week? Are we expecting them to spend 40 hours a week doing visitation? What is the job description? What is it that you are expecting this person to do? There needs to be absolute clarity amongst your team in order to do the search process right. Second thing, clarity, and this is shocking in the church world, but clarity around theology. One of the things that we're seeing just culturally is with the rise of podcasts and the ability for us to watch sermons from just amazing communicators from across the country, we start to get a little confused on our theology. Right. So it's not uncommon for somebody to listen to a podcast from John MacArthur and be going to, I don't know, a Pentecostal church. It's not uncommon for somebody to be going to a cessationist church and listening to Bill Johnson, right? There are so many different voices out there. And when things are kind of pushed out to the mainstream, it's not uncommon for people to get a little confused about what our church believes. And so, absolute clarity on who we are. Are we a Reformed church? Are we Arminian? Are we dispensationalist? Are we, egalitarian or complementarian? What are those closed-fisted issues that we have as a church? And what hills do we die on theologically? And there's not a good or bad answer to any of those, but the only bad answer really is to not have clarity on that. Because, one of the things that happens in the church world is we use the same words to mean very different things. Okay. So we may say we want somebody who's spirit-led, and that sounds great, but that means something very different to Bethel than it does to, John MacArthur's church. And so clarity on where we are theologically and the ability to make sure that everybody on our team is in lockstep on what our closed-fisted issues are and what are the open-handed issues. Another place where a lack of clarity gets us into trouble is just what are the expectations on this team? Is this team choosing the pastor? Is this team recommending to the board who a pastor is? And then the board does a series of interviews and recommends them to the church for final approval. What is your process? What is the expectation of that team? And what are you expecting them to do? It's very similar. It's just a time commitment on this. What we're finding is post-COVID, searches can run, 12, 18 months and be significant, be a serious, really long amount of time. The work that goes into actually doing a search is pretty significant. It's not uncommon for people to spend 30 to 45 minutes per resume that comes in order to make sure that we're focusing, that we're finding the right candidates and we're spending the time with the right candidates. And so making sure that we understand the time commitment that was being asked of search team members. If that's not clear up front, and if that's, a bad estimate on, if we estimate that it's only going to be an hour or so a month, you're going to lose people. And you're gonna need to reset. I would expect a decent search team at high, when they're in full swing, you're putting in an extra 10, 15, maybe 20, 30 hours a month on this, because this is a big deal. And it's a lot of work. And it needs to be a lot of work. And it needs to be a big deal. And it needs to be a significant spiritual weight, because this is important. The last thing that I see, churches getting in trouble on is just the size of their search committee and who they invite onto it, right? And so, the people that we bring on, if we have too many people, it's like herding cats, especially during busy times of the year. And so, we'll talk a little bit about who to target and what size of church or what size of search team that you want to look for, because what you don't want to be doing is having to continually postpone meetings because you don't have the majority of your people. You also want to make sure that the people that you invite on have the maturity to be able to, agree even when their preferences aren't met. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But those are the big areas that we see churches getting in trouble with. Inviting people with agendas, a lack of clarity around job descriptions, around theological, closed-fisted issues for your church, a lack of clarity around expectations of what's going on with the search team, and also expectations of the amount of time that people are looking to spend, that you're going to need to spend on this. And then the last big piece where churches get in trouble is just the size and the makeup of that search team. And so we'll talk more about each of those in future videos, but that's a good start. And so if there's anything that we can do to help you think through who should be on your search team or maybe who shouldn't be on your search team, there's a link below. We'd love to be able to have a conversation with you and see how we can serve.